The first Varen officer through the diplomatic doors ignored Fleet Admiral Marcus Thorne completely and saluted me. Not glanced at me. Not mistaken me for someone else. Saluted. Full formal recognition. Right hand to chest. Chin lowered. The exact gesture reserved for someone the Varens believed deserved acknowledgement before military command. Every officer at the coalition table went still. Marcus did not move at all. That was worse. I stood half a step behind his right shoulder with a translation slate in my hand, where I had stood through 12 hours of ceasefire talks, wearing civilian gray with no rank insignia and no authority beyond making sure the two most heavily armed governments in this sector understood each other correctly. The Varen commander raised his head and looked directly at me. Witness of Orison. I knew the title. I also knew Marcus did not. Translate, he said quietly. My mouth went dry. He acknowledged the delegation. Marcus turned his head just enough to look at me. That is not what he said. The room suddenly felt smaller. Across the table, the Varen commander's expression changed by less than an inch, but I saw it. He knew I had avoided the title. Elias, Marcus said, using my name instead of Translator Vale. Exactly as he said it. There were times when Marcus's obsession with literal accuracy was admirable. This was not one of them. He called me witness of Orison. Silence followed. One of the coalition security officers touched the control at his wrist. The doors sealed behind the Varen delegation. Marcus's eyes stayed on me. Meaning, it's obsolete. That wasn't my question. No, I said. It rarely is. Under normal circumstances, that would have earned me the look Marcus reserved for employees who had technically answered him while still being difficult. This time there was no irritation in it. Only attention. The Varen commander spoke again before Marcus could press me. We did not know the witness still served beneath another man's insignia. I translated that one exactly. I regretted it immediately. Marcus's jaw tightened. I don't have an insignia, I added. Not helping, he murmured. Historically, I usually do. The humor landed nowhere. Good. It should not have. The Varen commander sat only after I did. That was the second violation of protocol. The first salute could have been ceremonial recognition, waiting for me to sit established hierarchy. Marcus saw it. So did everyone else. The briefing resumed, but the room had changed. Marcus listened not only to the enemy, but to me. Security watched my hands. The Varens watched my face whenever disputed language appeared. 3 times, their commander accepted my wording even when his own diplomatic advisor started to object. By the 4th, Marcus stopped pretending not to notice. Pause translation. The room obeyed him. He leaned slightly toward me. How long have they known you? I don't know. They're deferring to your wording. They're agreeing with it. That is not the same thing. He was right, and I hated that he was right. I had spent years becoming professionally invisible because invisibility was useful. Powerful people liked translators who remembered everything and appeared to have no history of their own. I had learned 7 trade dialects, from military registers, and exactly as much about myself as anyone needed to know to sign my contract. It had kept me employed. More importantly, it had kept me uninteresting. The Varen salute destroyed that in under 10 seconds. Negotiations ended 20 minutes early. Coalition security met me outside the chamber before I reached the lift. Commander Sato held out her hand. Translation slate. I gave it to her. Your access band too. I looked at Marcus. Admiral, do it. The word hit harder than I expected. I removed the band. The corridor access lights changed from blue to amber beside my name. Restricted. Temporary, Marcus said. That word has a remarkable career in government service. His eyes lifted to mine. You withheld part of a direct translation during a ceasefire meeting after an enemy commander saluted you before me. When you say it like that, it sounds suspicious. There is no way to say it that does not sound suspicious. Sato stepped closer. Intelligence wants him transferred to secure review. Marcus's answer came instantly. No, that surprised both of us. He remains aboard the Resolute under my authority. Sir, if he has undisclosed Varen ties, then I want the man who has translated every private negotiation I've conducted for 6 months where I can see him. It was protection and suspicion in the same sentence. I wasn't sure which bothered me more. Sato left 2 security officers outside my quarters and took my slate. Marcus followed me inside before the door sealed. Tell me what witness of Orison means. I looked at the dark viewport instead of him. It's an old recognition title. For what? Someone whose word was accepted across combat lines. Marcus went still. You said it was obsolete. It is. And yet 3 enemy officers used it tonight. I had no safe answer. His display chimed. Marcus looked down, and the irritation left his face. Your wartime service file has a gap. My pulse changed. Most civilian records from the final year are incomplete. Not this kind of gap. He turned the display toward me. 3 years of my service history were replaced by a single line. Record sealed by strategic authority. Did you request this classification? I couldn't have. I was 21, civilian grade 4, and barely authorized to requisition a shuttle seat without 3 signatures. Marcus studied me differently after that. Less like a subordinate caught withholding information. More like evidence that no longer matched the official explanation. Another message appeared from the Varen delegation. No text. Just an archived recognition code attached to my name. Marcus opened it. The coalition database returned no match. I did not need the database. I knew exactly what it meant. Marcus looked up. Elias. I kept my eyes on the code. You wanted the exact translation. I do. I swallowed once. It means the one whose word outranks the order to fire. The code stayed on Marcus's display for 3 seconds before the system locked him out of his own query. Access denied. Strategic authority. That changed the room more than the salute had. Marcus stared at the message, then at me. You're telling me a civilian translator's history is classified above Fleet Command. I'm telling you I didn't classify it. Outside my quarters, one of the security officers shifted position. Marcus noticed and lowered his voice. Then someone did. Before I could answer, the door opened without waiting for permission. Commander Sato stepped inside with a security tablet and 2 officers wearing only the silver directorate seal at the collar. That was worse. Elias Vale, the taller one, said, "You are being placed under temporary strategic review." I looked at Marcus. There's that word again. Not now. The officer held out his hand. All communications access, translation credentials, and personal data links are suspended until review concludes. On whose authority? Marcus asked. Central Security. Marcus read the order. This bypasses fleet jurisdiction. Correct. He is assigned to my command. He was. The sentence landed cleanly. My access band had already gone amber. Now they were removing the role that had made me useful in the first place. For years, I had believed usefulness bought safety. Apparently, it only worked until usefulness became suspicious. Sato watched me carefully. We need the full meaning of the Varen title. You already have the literal translation. We need historical context. The directorate officer's patience thinned. Your database does not react when the enemy salutes you. Marcus moved half a step between us, not enough to look protective, just enough to change the geometry. He answers here. Admiral here. The officer studied him. 40 minutes. Then Central Security takes custody. They left. The door sealed. Marcus exhaled through his nose. You have 39 minutes to stop making this harder. I thought that was my job. Your job was translation. Apparently not anymore. For the first time since the negotiations, he looked genuinely angry. Not at me exactly, but at the shape the situation had taken. Start with the title. I sat because standing felt too much like formal review. Witness of Orison is not a rank. It's a recognition category. Military? Not exactly. Diplomatic? Not exactly. His stare sharpened. You are doing this on purpose. I'm trying to avoid giving you a false equivalent. That made him pause. Fine. Give me the long version. Historically, the Varens used the title for someone whose interpretation of a disputed command was accepted across active combat lines. Accepted by whom? Whoever was still alive to follow it. Marcus went still. And you were given this title. I was called it. His wrist display chimed again. Sato had pushed him a restricted personnel search. Most of my record looked ordinary. Academy linguistics, civilian deployment, logistics translation, demobilization, private diplomatic work. But the 3-year gap was still sealed. Marcus expanded the metadata. This seal predates your current service by 8 years. Your deployment location before it begins was Orison Corridor. My stomach tightened. Same word as the title. I nodded once. What happened there? A ceasefire attempt. That's in the public record. The public record is incomplete. Silence settled between us. Marcus did not press immediately, which made it harder, not easier. Finally, he said, Were you working for the Varens? No. Did you ever hold Varen rank? No. Were you recruited by them? No. His shoulders eased by less than an inch. Then why do they defer to you? I looked at the sealed file. Because once, during Orison, they believed my translation more than they believed in order. That was the first piece I had given him freely. Marcus heard the difference. What order? Before I could answer, the wall terminal activated on its own. Remote access initiated. Record retrieval in progress. Someone was searching my files from outside. Marcus crossed the room and cut the terminal from the wall interface. They're not waiting 40 minutes. No. He looked at me. Decision forming in real time. Can you navigate the wartime archive? Probably. You said 39 minutes. He ignored that. We're finding out what they're trying to reach before they erase it. That was the shift. Marcus was no longer interrogating me as the problem. He was treating the record itself as suspect. Sato's voice came over his comm. Admiral, Central Security has revoked Vale's translation credentials entirely. Effective. Now. My wall badge indicator went dark. 6 months of diplomatic access vanished with one command. The loss hit like proof that everything I had built could disappear the moment people decided my usefulness meant something different. Marcus noticed my face. Elias, I'm fine. That wasn't a translation request. It was the first time all night he had asked about me without asking what I knew. Then Sato sent another file. A corrupted wartime personnel fragment appeared. My name was attached to a transmission timestamp from Orison. Beneath it was a Varen notation the Coalition software rendered as honor status, unverified. I read the original before Marcus could. The machine translation was wrong. What does it actually say, he asked. I hesitated. Exactly as written. I took a breath. Recognized witness. Protected from retaliation by both lines. Marcus stared at the text. Then the fragment disappeared from his display. Not closed. Deleted remotely. He looked at the blank screen, and when he spoke again, his voice was very quiet. Someone doesn't want me to know why both sides were protecting you. The deleted fragment changed Marcus's posture before it changed his opinion. Until then, he had been trying to determine whether I was hiding something from him. Now someone else had reached into a restricted wartime archive, deleted evidence from his display, and confirmed that whatever I was hiding was not mine alone. We move, he said. Where? Somewhere Central Security cannot erase the room while we're standing in it. That narrows the ship considerably. He keyed a manual override into my door. Outside, Commander Sato looked from Marcus to me. Admiral, Central Security ordered Vale held. He is held. Marcus stepped into the corridor. By me. That was not freedom, but it was a shift. 10 minutes earlier, I had been evidence under suspicion. Now Marcus was treating the interference itself as evidence. He took us 2 decks down to the Resolute's sealed combat archive, an offline system reserved for battle reconstruction after network compromise. Sato protested once. Marcus used rank once. That settled it. Inside, Marcus loaded the surviving metadata. While I rebuilt the Orison timeline from old deployment indexes. You said you were civilian grade 4, he said. I was. Yet your voice appears inside a command transmission. Civilian interpreters were embedded wherever officers needed someone to tell them what the other side actually meant. And someone decided you should disappear from the record afterward. I looked at the screen. That part came later. He heard the boundary and did not cross it. Instead, he opened the first recovered audio shard. Static filled the room, followed by a voice I recognized even after 8 years. Coalition Commander Rusk. Varen evacuation column has failed to comply. Prepare strike authorization. Marcus frowned. Public history says the Varens rejected evacuation terms. That is what the report says. A second voice entered the recording. Mine. Younger. Tighter. Sir, that is not what their message says. My hands went cold. Rusk answered. Translator, I heard the transmission. You heard the coalition rendering. The original says they accept corridor evacuation if civilian ships are cleared first. A pause. Then Rusk. That distinction is operationally irrelevant. Marcus went completely still. We both knew it was not. Civilian clearance first versus refusal to comply could be the difference between delayed evacuation and justification for attack. The audio broke into static. I forced open another corrupted segment. Varen voices came through first, overlapping, urgent. Then mine again, speaking directly in their military register without coalition authorization. Marcus turned toward me. You addressed enemy command yourself. Yes. Without authorization. Also yes. You understand how bad that sounds. I understood it at the time. The recording continued. My younger voice translated the Varen statement back into Coalition standard word for word, then repeated it in the original language to both channels. Seconds later, the tactical display changed. 3 Coalition strike groups halted advance. 2 Varen defense wings pulled back from firing position. Marcus leaned toward the screen. Your correction changed both formations. It changed what they believed. The other side had said. Another file appeared in the damaged cluster, time-stamped the same minute. A Varen officer's voice came through, low and formal. Witness of Orison. Translation accepted. The honorific landed differently this time. In Part 1, it had sounded like hidden status. Here, it sounded earned in the middle of a crisis. Marcus replayed the line. That's when they started calling you that. As far as I know. And the Coalition? I hesitated. Did not. Sato's terminal chirped. She looked down and swore softly. Someone just requested physical purge authorization for this archive block. From where? Marcus asked. Strategic Records Directorate. The same authority that had sealed my history. The purge request had been submitted seconds after we opened the Orison files. They can't remotely delete this system, I said. No, Sato replied. They can send someone to erase it in person. The archive door status changed from green to amber. Incoming security authorization. Marcus looked at me. How much can you reconstruct before they arrive? Enough if the surviving logs align. Then do it. We worked fast. Marcus rebuilt ship movements from tactical records. I cross-referenced timestamps and translation revisions. Neither of us could have done it alone. He saw where fleets moved. I saw why a single verb tense mattered before they moved. Within minutes, a pattern emerged. The official Coalition transcript had been edited after the fact. Not dramatically, just enough. Request conditional delay had become refuse compliance. Await civilian clearance had become deny withdrawal. Every alteration pushed the same narrative. The Varens had rejected evacuation. Marcus stared at the revisions. Someone manufactured justification. Someone edited language after the ships stood down. Same effect historically. The door outside locked red. Sato moved toward it. They're here. Marcus copied the files to an isolated combat recorder and handed it to me instead of keeping it himself. Why me? Because they already expect me to possess evidence. His eyes held mine. They still think you're only the translator. It was the first time the phrase sounded like an advantage. The door opened under directorate override. 2 security officers entered, followed by the same silver-collared man from my quarters. His gaze dropped to the active Orison display. An irritation flashed before he hit it. Admiral, this archive review is unauthorized. Marcus stepped between him and the console. Then explain why your office is trying to destroy it. The man's expression hardened. Those records are contaminated. Behind him, one surviving line of Varen audio was still playing. My younger voice finished the disputed translation. Then a Varen commander answered, Witness of Orison. Translation accepted. The directorate officer heard it. For the first time, he looked at me not like a suspected spy, but like a problem he recognized. That reaction told me more than the file had. He already knew what the salute meant, and he was afraid Marcus was getting close enough to understand it. The directorate officer did not bother denying the purge request. He looked at Marcus and said, Admiral, step away from the console. That was the moment the investigation stopped being theoretical. Marcus did not move. You're attempting to destroy active wartime evidence during a ceasefire review. I'm executing a strategic records directive. On what grounds? Compartmentalized authority. Marcus's expression changed in the small, dangerous way it did when someone tried to replace an answer with procedure. That is not a ground. It is a wall. The officer's gaze shifted to me. Elias Vale is now classified as a protected diplomatic asset. He will be transferred to directorate custody. Protected. The word hit harder than detained would have. Yesterday, I was a translator. This morning, I was a security concern. Now I'm an asset. The directorate officer ignored me. All independent communications are suspended. No unsupervised Varen contact. No archival access. Any future testimony will be handled through strategic security, pending classification review. There it was. Not just confinement. If they moved me now, they could decide when I spoke, where I spoke, and which version of my own history counted as authorized. Marcus read the transfer order on Sato's tablet. He stays aboard the Resolute. You no longer have jurisdiction over his classification. I have jurisdiction over this ship. Then you understand what happens if you obstruct strategic security. The threat was aimed at Marcus now. He could have handed me over and protected his command. Instead, he turned to Sato. Seal this archive under Fleet Evidentiary Hold. 2 key access. Nothing leaves. The Directorate officer's face hardened. That order will be reviewed. Most of mine are. Marcus sealed the combat recorder in an evidence case and handed it back to me. Vale remains under my direct supervision until review concludes. It was still control, only positioned between me and something worse. I hated how complicated that made my anger. We left the archive under escort. My quarters had already been stripped of the personal terminal and civilian comm unit. A security field covered the viewport. You said direct supervision, I told Marcus. This feels ambitious. Central Security wanted you off my ship, and your compromise was to make sure I can't leave the room. My compromise was to make sure they need my authorization to enter it. I turned toward him. Do you hear yourself? His jaw tightened. Someone is deleting evidence connected to you in real time. The Varens are requesting you by name. I still do not know everything you are hiding. So you remove my choices until the situation becomes convenient? I reduce variables until I understand the threat. I'm not a variable. Silence. Marcus looked at me for several seconds. No, he said finally. You're not. He removed the security override from my door controls and placed it on the table. You keep local control. If anyone enters, they need your authorization or mine. It was not freedom, but it cost him authority to give it back. Before either of us could say more, his display lit with a Varen diplomatic request. They formally asked that I attend the next ceasefire session as an independent linguistic witness. Not translator. Witness. Attached was an old interline protocol granting recognized witnesses protection from retaliation by either combatant during active negotiation. Marcus read it twice. If this still has standing, Central Security may not be able to move you without jeopardizing the ceasefire. Which explains why they want the old record gone. He opened the suppression metadata. The office code matched today's transfer order exactly. Same directorate branch, same classification family, 8 years apart. They didn't start watching you because of yesterday's salute, Marcus said. They were already prepared for the possibility that someone would recognize you. My anonymity had never been complete. Someone had maintained it. What happened after Orison? He asked. Not yet. His expression hardened. Elias, you want the truth? Yes. Then stop asking for it while I'm locked in a room, because people decided I'm safer without choices. The words landed. Marcus looked at the guards outside, then at the door control he had given me. If I remove the restrictions, Central Security can claim I compromised the investigation. I know. If I keep them, you stop trusting me. That's already happening. Marcus keyed his comm Sato. Withdraw the interior security field. Restore Vale's personal comm access under monitored encryption. Guards moved to corridor distance. A pause. Yes, I'm aware of the directive. He ended the channel. That was not an apology. It was better. It was behavior. My restored comm unit came alive almost immediately with a Varen transmission, a scanned coalition document from 8 years earlier, bearing the same directorate seal. Beneath the header was a single instruction. Witness status not to be acknowledged in official record. Marcus read it beside me. They weren't trying to hide what you did from the enemy. No, the enemy already knew. They were trying to hide it from us. At the bottom, beside an unfamiliar reason code, one surviving phrase from the Orison inquiry remained. Accurate translation determined operationally destabilizing. The phrase operationally destabilizing stayed on the screen between us like an accusation. Marcus read it twice. That wording doesn't mean your translation was wrong. No. It means someone decided accuracy was the problem. That was the contradiction we had been circling without naming. I had spent years believing Orison became dangerous because I stepped outside my role. The document suggested the opposite. My role became dangerous because I did it correctly. Marcus compared the Varen scan against the coalition fragment we had saved. The timestamps and command chain matched. An embedded audio checksum link to the original inquiry survived. The file decrypted in pieces. Commander Rusk's voice came first. Civilian interpreter Vale exceeded authorization and transmitted directly across enemy channels. Another officer answered. His translation prevented an unauthorized strike. Rusk replied. It also undermined command cohesion during active engagement. Marcus stopped playback. They weren't investigating whether you mistranslated anything. They were investigating what happened when your accurate translation overruled the version command wanted. He restarted the file. A casualty projection appeared in the inquiry notes. If the strike had proceeded, civilian transports would have crossed directly into the attack envelope. Tens of thousands. Families. Medical carriers. Marcus stared at the number. This is why both fleets stood down. Partly. The Varens had already accepted evacuation if civilian ships cleared first. Rusk's staff changed conditional compliance to refusal. Once I corrected it across both channels, nobody could pretend the wording was unclear. And that's when they called you witness of Orison. I nodded. This time it felt less like admitting hidden status than admitting I had once stood somewhere everyone else wanted erased. Marcus looked back at the inquiry. Why bury you instead of prosecuting Rusk? Because prosecution required an official record, which would expose Coalition Command and Varen Command. I opened a surviving Varen notation. One of their commanders had planned to use the expected coalition strike as justification for a retaliatory attack against military docks with civilian infrastructure nearby. My correction removed their excuse too. Marcus sat back. So neither side wanted the full story. They wanted restraint to look like disciplined command, not like a 21-year-old civilian translator forcing both fleets to acknowledge what the other had actually said. The inquiry continued. After Orison, both governments had offered me protection with conditions. The Varens would grant sanctuary if I publicly confirmed their account. Coalition security would seal my identity if I agreed never to challenge theirs. And you chose silence, Marcus said. I chose the only option that didn't require becoming someone else's evidence. The admission came out flatter than I intended. For 8 years, invisibility had been my survival strategy. The salute had not merely exposed a secret. It had destroyed the arrangement that kept everyone else from deciding what my credibility was worth. Marcus did not immediately ask for more. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter. I owe you an apology. That sounds medically serious. I'm not joking. Neither was I anymore. When security flagged you, I treated missing information as a problem I could solve by narrowing your options. I was wrong. He did not pretend his protection had been harmless because his intentions were better than the Directorate's. That mattered. You still don't know everything, I said. No, that doesn't bother you. It bothers me enormously. The corner of my mouth moved. His almost did too. But I no longer think the missing pieces prove you belong to the enemy. They prove both sides had reasons to stop anyone from hearing your version without permission. He turned the screen toward me, which means our objective changes. Until then, we had been trying to prove I was not compromised. That question suddenly felt too small. We recover the complete Orison record, I said, before either side decides what it means for me, and before either side decides what it means for the ceasefire. Marcus paused, including my own directorate. My restored comm unit chimed. A secure Varen request appeared. Joint witness testimony. Priority. 5 seconds later, Coalition Strategic Security sent another formal public statement. Draft pending your approval. 2 governments, both suddenly eager to give me words. Marcus looked from one request to the other. Do you intend to answer either one? I looked at the screens and felt, for the first time, less afraid of being seen than of being rewritten. Not until I know what they're trying to make me say. He nodded. No order. No instruction. Just agreement. The midpoint truth was finally clear. The enemy had never saluted me because I belonged to them. They saluted me because once, at Orison, my words had belonged to no one. And both governments had spent 8 years making sure that never happened again. The first consequence of understanding Orison was that silence stopped protecting me. By the time Marcus and I returned to the command level, both governments had already drafted versions of my history, and neither sounded like mine. Coalition Strategic Security called me a civilian interpreter whose actions had been mischaracterized by hostile forces. The Varen statement called me the independent witness who rejected coalition aggression. Both were technically defensible. Both were incomplete enough to be useful. Marcus read them side by side. They're not asking what happened. No, they're asking which version I'm willing to make official. Commander Sato entered with a sealed physical recorder recovered from an old archive before Directorate access closed. The important section was an internal coalition meeting 6 hours after the Orison stand-down. One officer argued that the accurate transcript should be released. Another replied, if Vale's version becomes authoritative, command liability expands beyond the incident. Marcus stopped the playback. They were protecting more than officers. They were protecting precedent. If a civilian translator could prove command had manipulated wording once, every contested translation after Orison became reviewable. My credibility threatened the system that decided whose language counted as history, that made the Directorate's current behavior easier to understand. Coalition Security requested my approval of a public statement within 2 hours. Its final paragraph affirmed my continued confidence in Coalition command integrity. The Varens sent their own request asking me to confirm that Coalition forces had knowingly attempted unlawful attack. Marcus read both. Subtle. Diplomacy has suffered. What happens if you approve neither? They interpret silence for me. That was the trap. Silence had once been my shield. Now it was a blank page other people could sign. One encrypted section remained on the physical recorder. The Varens could verify its old bilateral cipher, so we opened a joint technical channel under ceasefire protection. Their senior commander appeared live instead. Witness Vale. We will verify the record if you agree to release your testimony. Marcus stiffened beside me. There it is, I said softly. The commander continued. Your government erased what happened. We preserved it. And now you want to own the correction. We want the truth acknowledged. Only the part that damages them. His silence answered for him. I ended the channel. They're doing the same thing. Not identically, Marcus said. No. More politely. He studied me. You could leave. The Varens would grant sanctuary. Coalition security would probably prefer that. And you? He hesitated. I would prefer you somewhere I can protect you. That isn't what I asked. Marcus looked toward the stars beyond the command viewport. When he spoke again, the Admiral had gone out of his voice. I would prefer you not disappear, because everyone around you has made being visible unbearable. The words landed harder than I expected. I'm good at disappearing. I know. It kept me alive. I know that too. But if you leave because they cornered you into it, that is not the same thing as choosing to go. There was no command in the sentence. I set the sanctuary offer aside. Then I'm staying. We built a new strategy. Recover independent evidence, verify it across both fleets, and release nothing until neither government could isolate a sentence and call it the whole truth. Marcus gave me access to restricted command logs that could damage his career if traced. You understand what this gives me? Yes. If I decide your side is worse than theirs, then I assume you will tell me before you destroy my life. I looked at him. That was almost trust. Do not make me regret it. Before I could answer, every public channel aboard the Resolute flashed red. Someone had leaked selected Orison fragments. Coalition feeds labeled me a compromised interpreter. Varen feeds called me their honored witness. Then the leak widened. My contract photo, civilian registry, deployment record, and current assignment appeared across public mirrors faster than security could suppress them. My anonymity was no longer merely damaged. It was gone. Even if I boarded a shuttle that minute, there would be no returning to the invisible life I had built after Orison. Marcus looked at the broadcasts, then at me. They moved before we could. I watched strangers attach 2 different histories to the same face and understood the new objective. We were no longer trying to recover my past. We had to stop both sides from deciding my future with it. The leak did what the Directorate wanted faster than any detention order could have. Within 11 minutes, ceasefire talks were suspended, my name was trending across both fleet networks, and Marcus received a direct command from Strategic Security ordering him to secure witness Vale's cooperation pending formal clarification. Cooperation had become another word with a dangerous career. Marcus read the order once, then handed the display to me. They want a statement in 30 minutes. Which version? Coalition draft first. I opened it. Every sentence was technically defensible. That was the problem. It described Orison as a translation dispute, called my intervention procedurally irregular, and affirmed that Coalition Command had acted within the information available at the time. Nothing was an obvious lie. Put together, it erased the exact truth we had spent 6 parts recovering. Another alert arrived before I finished reading. The Varens had released their own statement claiming I had stood with Varen forces against unlawful coalition aggression. Also defensible. Also false in the only way that mattered. I had stood against both sides using language as permission to kill. They're building the same cage from opposite directions, I said. Marcus's comm chimed. Commander Sato's voice came through. Admiral, Directorate officers are requesting access to the command level. They have central authorization. Marcus looked at me. How long? For minutes. And if you refuse them? That becomes disobedience under active diplomatic emergency. Your command, at minimum, suspended pending review. The answer was too calm. That made it worse. Marcus. He held my gaze. Do not ask me to pretend I don't understand the cost. Before I could respond, the main display switched to the joint ceasefire channel. 3 delegation members appeared, 2 coalition, 1 Varen. No pleasantries. Witness Vale, the coalition representative said. Negotiations will remain suspended until your status is clarified. The Varen representative cut in. His status is already clear. Not under coalition law. Your law does not erase interline recognition. They started arguing over me while I stood in the room. Again, Marcus stepped toward the display. Enough. Both delegates stopped. His voice carried command without needing volume. If you require Vale's testimony, address him directly. That was a small thing. It should not have felt enormous. The coalition representative turned to me. Mr. Vale, will you affirm that you have no allegiance to the Varen Dominion? I could have said yes. It would have been true. The Varen representative immediately added, will you affirm that coalition command knowingly manipulated the Orison translation? Also partly true. 2 questions. 2 traps. Each wanted a clean sentence they could broadcast without the rest. I will affirm neither statement in isolation, I said. The coalition representative's face hardened. The ceasefire cannot remain hostage to semantic caution. Something old and ugly moved through me. 8 years earlier, Commander Rusk had called a distinction operationally irrelevant right before civilians almost died because of it. Semantic caution is why there was anyone left to negotiate after Orison. Silence filled the channel. The Varen representative looked almost satisfied. I hated that too. Marcus saw it. Do not use that clip, he said immediately. The Varen representative's expression cooled. You do not control our public record. Neither do you, I said. That shifted the room again. For the first time, both sides were irritated with me at once. It felt strangely familiar. Sato entered from the rear access corridor. Directorate team is 30 seconds out. Marcus looked at her. Lock the diplomatic archive. Sir, under Fleet evidentiary authority. They'll override it. Make them do it formally. Sato nodded and left. I turned to him. You're buying me time. Yes. At the cost of your command. Possibly. Why? His jaw tightened, not because he lacked an answer, but because the honest one was harder. Because if I force you to read that statement, I become useful to the same system that erased you. The words landed without decoration. He continued, quieter. And because I trust you to decide what the truth costs you. There it was. Not trust in my translation. Not trust in evidence. Trust in me making a choice he could not control. The door behind us unlocked under central override. 4 Directorate officers entered. The silver-collared official from Part 3 led them. He carried a formal detention order. Admiral Thorne, stand aside. Marcus did not. Vale is required to issue an approved clarification before additional unauthorized disclosure destabilizes the ceasefire. He is required to tell the truth, Marcus said. He is required to comply with lawful command authority. He is civilian. He is under strategic classification. The officer held out the approved statement to me. Read this and the restrictions end. I took the tablet. Marcus said nothing. That mattered more than if he had told me to refuse. The statement was beautifully written. Safe language. Clean language. The kind that protected institutions because every sentence survived scrutiny while the truth disappeared between them. I reached the final paragraph and found the real trap. I would affirm that all future interpretation of the Orison record should be handled through coalition strategic security. My voice would become theirs again. No, the officer's expression barely changed. Consider carefully. I am. If you refuse, talks remain suspended. Admiral Thorne faces. Disciplinary review. Your security status escalates. Varen media will continue presenting you as their witness. He had finally assembled the perfect pressure. My freedom. Marcus's career. The ceasefire. My public identity. Everything I cared about stacked behind one easy sentence. Marcus looked at me. Elias. I expected advice. Instead he asked, what do you want to say? No one had asked me that at Orison. No one had asked after. For 8 years, people had wanted translations, confirmations, denials, endorsements. Never my own version. I looked at the coalition statement in my hands, then at the Varen broadcast still waiting on the screen. 2 scripts. Same mistake. I want the full record released. The directorate officer's face went cold. That is not authorized. Then stop asking me for clarification. I handed the tablet back. You want a statement? You'll get mine. Marcus understood before anyone else did. Public channel? Joint channel. Both sides. Once you do that, there's no going back to anonymity. My old instinct answered immediately. Disappear, stay useful, survive. I let it speak inside me and did not obey it. I know. The directorate officer stepped forward. Admiral, prevent this. Marcus looked at him, then at me. No, one word. Professional cost attached. Personal meaning underneath. He opened the joint broadcast channel himself, then stepped away from the console. Not in front of me. Beside me. Every display on the command deck lit with the same waiting signal. Coalition. Varen. Fleet civilian channels. The ceasefire delegation. My face appeared in the center of all of them. Marcus placed the approved statement on the table where I could see it, then turned it face down. Your words, he said. For the first time in 8 years, there was nowhere left to hide behind someone else's. I looked into the joint channel and did the one thing both governments had spent 8 years making difficult. I spoke without translating anyone else. My name is Elias Vale. I was the civilian interpreter present at Orison. The official coalition record is incomplete. The Varen public account is also incomplete. I will correct both. The command deck went silent. Marcus stood beside me, not touching the console, not feeding me language. I opened the first authenticated file. This is the original Varen evacuation message. I played it once in the source language, then translated it exactly. They accepted withdrawal on the condition that civilian transports cleared the corridor first. The coalition representative cut in. That message was disputed under combat conditions. No. The translation was altered under combat conditions. I opened Commander Rusk's staff version beside the original. Conditional acceptance had become refusal. A small change, technical enough to hide, large enough to kill people. That alteration created justification for a strike the original message did not support. The Varen representative leaned forward. And coalition forces prepared to fire. Yes. Satisfaction flickered across his face. I did not let him keep it. Your side also prepared a retaliatory strike against infrastructure with civilian exposure if the coalition attack went forward. His expression hardened. That information is classified. Not anymore. I released the Varen tactical logs. No side had clean hands left. That was the point. At Orison, Coalition Command tried to turn acceptance into refusal. Varen Command prepared to use the expected attack as justification for escalation. When the corrected wording went across both channels, both sides lost the excuse they had built. The directorate officer behind me spoke. Admiral Thorne, terminate this transmission. Marcus did not turn around. On what authority? Strategic security. Immediate compliance. Put it in writing. You already have a lawful order. Then you can explain to review why you issued it during authenticated testimony. The officer's voice sharpened. You are jeopardizing your command. Marcus finally looked at him. I'm aware. He accepted the cost without making it mine. Then he looked back at me. Continue. One word, but not an instruction this time. I opened the post-Orison inquiry. 6 hours after the stand-down, coalition officials discussed whether the accurate transcript should enter the public record. Their concern was liability. I played the recovered line. If Vale's version becomes authoritative, command liability expands beyond the incident. Then I opened the Varen preservation record. The Varens kept the original exchange. That does not make them neutral. Their government later offered me sanctuary if I publicly endorsed their version. The Varen representative spoke through clenched control. You were offered protection. Yes, in exchange for becoming useful to your narrative. I turned to the coalition side. Coalition security offered me sealed identity protection if I agreed never to challenge theirs. The directorate officer stepped toward the console. Marcus moved once and blocked him. No violence. Just authority meeting authority. Do not touch that channel. You are obstructing strategic security. Then document it. The officer stopped. Everyone was finally forced into a record no one side could quietly edit afterward. I took one breath. I accepted silence because I thought being unimportant was the closest thing I had to being safe. My voice stayed level, but my hands did not. I was wrong. Silence did not protect the truth. It only made it easier for other people to speak for me. That sentence landed harder than any evidence file because it was mine. I looked directly into the camera. I have no allegiance to the Varan Dominion. I also will not certify that Coalition Command acted honestly at Orison. Both statements would be convenient. Neither is complete. The ceasefire delegates began exchanging messages off-channel. I continued before procedure could swallow the moment. If these negotiations require my endorsement, then my endorsement has one condition. The Orison record is placed under independent bilateral verification. Original language transmissions, tactical logs, inquiry records, suppression directives. All of it. No classified summary written by either side. The coalition delegate stared at me. You are setting terms for military negotiations. No, I'm setting terms for the use of my testimony. That distinction mattered. It always had. The Varan commander from Part 1 appeared on the secondary feed. He raised his hand to his chest in. The same formal salute. Witness Vale. The Dominion will submit its Orison archive to independent review. The coalition representative looked cornered. Marcus did not rescue them. Neither did I. After a long silence, the coalition delegate said, "We will submit matching records." The balance changed in one sentence. The ceasefire no longer depended on me validating either government story. It depended on evidence neither could control alone. My public identity was gone forever, but so was the version of me that could be erased without resistance. The directorate officer received a message, read it, and went pale. Fleet Admiral Thorne, you are suspended from discretionary diplomatic authority, pending review. Marcus absorbed that without expression. I turned toward him. Marcus, finish. The statement is over. Then finish deciding what happens next. Another notice appeared on my console. Civilian assignment status. Released pending independent witness protection. My compulsory service aboard the Resolute ended immediately. Translator Vale no longer existed in Marcus's chain of command. He could not order me to stay. The core conflict had been decided. The truth was public. The records were moving beyond institutional control, and the ceasefire had resumed under independent verification. What remained was smaller, quieter, and somehow more frightening. For the first time since the enemy saluted me, Marcus and I stood beside each other with no job left to explain why. The first consequence of telling the truth was that I no longer belonged to the Resolute. My civilian credentials had been detached from Fleet Command. Marcus's diplomatic authority was under review, and strategic security could no longer classify the Orison record without outside oversight. It did not feel like victory. It felt like standing on a deck after gravity cut out. Everything still there, nothing holding me in the place I understood. Marcus walked me to the observation corridor without an escort. No security field. No guards. No protection disguised as confinement. At the junction where civilian quarters split from command access, he stopped. Independent witness protection can move. You off the ship within the hour. You sound remarkably efficient for someone who just got suspended. I remain efficient under emotional distress. I looked at him. Was that a joke? Possibly. The warmth was small, but after everything, small was enough. You could have kept your command if you'd followed the order, I said. Possibly. You knew that. Yes. And you still opened the channel. Marcus looked at me not like an admiral reviewing a decision, but like a man waiting to see whether I understood what it meant. You spent 8 years being punished for speaking without permission. I was not going to become the person who made you ask for it again. Something in me stopped bracing. I had spent years assuming care eventually became control. Marcus had paid a real price to break that pattern. You know I'm still angry about the detention room. I assumed forgiveness would be more complicated than one public act of insubordination. Good. Your strategic instincts survive. This time I knew the movement at the corner of his mouth was a smile. 3 days later, independent investigators took custody of the complete Orison record. Coalition Command opened a review into the altered translations and suppression order. The Varans surrendered the retaliatory logs they would have preferred to keep buried. The ceasefire resumed under joint verification. Nobody emerged morally clean, which was probably the most honest outcome available. Marcus kept his rank, but his diplomatic authority remained restricted, and the promotion everyone had expected disappeared from the next command cycle. He never suggested I had cost him anything. My own future changed too. I turned down most of the agencies suddenly interested in my testimony and accepted a position with an independent interline language commission for one reason. The contract gave me the right to refuse assignments without explanation. Marcus read that clause twice. You negotiated this. Violently. I'm proud of you. The words caught me off guard. That was dangerously direct. I'm adapting. Without a briefing schedule or chain of command between us, we had to learn how to ask for things plainly. The first time Marcus started with, translate exactly what I said, he stopped himself. You are not translating for me anymore. Excellent situational awareness, Admiral. Marcus, that remains under review. He gave me the look I had missed more than I intended to admit. Then he tried again. Elias, would you come with me to the station council reception because I want you there? Professionally, he took a full second. No, my pulse changed just enough. Then yes. Months later, the Independent Commission held its first formal ceasefire review aboard a neutral station. I arrived as myself, not coalition staff. Marcus attended under fleet insignia again, his authority partially restored. We entered from separate corridors and met outside the diplomatic chamber. For once, I was not half a step behind him. The Varan delegation approached from the opposite side. Their senior commander was the same man who had destroyed my anonymity with one salute. He stopped, placed his hand over his chest, and lowered his head. Witness Vale. The gesture was the same. I was not. This time I returned it. Commander. He glanced toward Marcus, perhaps expecting the Admiral to speak next. Marcus simply waited beside me. The old version of our relationship would have felt incomplete without an instruction. Now the silence felt like space. Inside the chamber, a coalition representative handed Marcus the prepared opening statement. He read the first line, frowned, and glanced toward me by instinct. Translate exactly, he stopped. I raised an eyebrow. A small smile appeared. Marcus set the statement aside. No, I'll choose my own words. He spoke plainly. When he finished, nobody looked at me waiting for interpretation. I spoke only when I had something of my own to say. That was the difference. When the meeting ended, Marcus waited by the door instead of telling me where to stand. Are you coming? No rank in his voice. No order underneath it. Just the question. I looked back once at the chamber where people still argued over borders, translations, and who had the right to define the truth. Then I stepped beside him. Exactly as I said it, I told him.